Hi everybody, welcome to my first ever Facebook Live post. This is called Look Up with Licia, and it's something I'm hoping to do every night. Well, to the best of my ability, I'm going to try and do this every night, and between interacting with my followers of the campaign and the general public as well. The idea behind doing these is to make myself fully accessible to the community of Wentworth, and not put anyone between me and the public, which is often the role of an independent and not necessarily how the major parties operate. So thank you for joining me. Oh, I see lots of people joining actually, which is exciting. I have been so buoyed by how many people have been following already, and the messages of support and the volunteers that have signed up on my page to help either with letterboxing or helping on election day, and even skill sets like, do you need digital help or do you need design help? And I'm so grateful for that. And let me kind of delve into why I am doing this. Well, there's a couple of reasons. People keep saying to me in the street, you don't know a lot about how to do this, do you? And I say, why do you say that? And they say, well, because you wouldn't be doing it otherwise. which sometimes fills me with dread, but actually, if anything, kind of strengthens my resolve about why I'm doing this. Because why I am doing this is the landscape is so bad in Australian politics at the moment, and I've spent many, many months thinking about how it's got this bad and what the solutions are. And part of the solution, in fact, at the top of the heap, is we need people that have disengaged, which is largely the kind of moderate centre of the Australian political spectrum, to re-engage. And we've been in this negative feedback loop that's really continues to be in this downward spiral, which is the worse our politicians behave, the more people disengage. And unfortunately, the more people disengage, the much easier it is to be a bad politician. And that's a bad repetitive loop that we're in at the moment. So what's it going to take to short circuit it? Well, it's going to take more normal, ordinary moderates getting back involved and filling the vacuum that has been created. Because what fills the vacuum is noisy, fringe-dwelling individuals, often with vested interests. So that's one of the reasons I'm doing this. Oh, thank you everybody for joining. Hi Kitsa, hi Alex, hi Suze, hi Hazel. And please feel free to ask questions as we go along. This is part of the idea to you ask questions and I'll answer them. And if I see a lot of themes coming up, then that will help produce the topics for kind of future evenings as well. The second reason I'm doing this is, and why I'm doing it as an independent, is I know that there are going to be topics that the two major parties, Labor and Liberal, just are not going to be talking about. And too often than not, those topics are the ones that when you're polling the constituents, not just of Wentworth, but nationally, the topics that people, I think, are most critical. So I don't want a by-election to occur in Wentworth where topics such as environment, asylum seekers, a federal ICAC, parliamentary reform, media reform is not going to be discussed. So I want to make sure that it is discussed. And probably finally, the third reason that I'm going to be doing this, and that I am doing this, I'm committed, I'm public, is my experience in Wentworth in the last couple of years. So obviously I've been spearheading the Close East campaign, and that has been well, a fabulous experience of getting an inside look into how decisions are made, whether that's at a local government, state government or federal government level, I've worked across all the major parties, including independents. I've worked very collaboratively with all parties, with respect and civility. It's actually not that hard, and have been actually complimented along the way about how the campaign has been run. So we've deliberately not been political, we've been non-partisan, we've used facts, and we've approached things from, I think, a pretty diligent level. So that gives me, that kind of buoys me that an independent who should be able to demonstrate that they can work across party lines, not be a blocker, but be somebody who wants to see things go through, legislation go through, that can be achieved. So Sean Jungworth, Wentworthy, love it. You are going to see that hashtag Wentworthy come around more and more. That is the key tenet of my campaign. We are Wentworthy, you are Wentworthy, and together we can make some considerable change. Now let's talk about what's actually happening in Wentworth in terms of the by-election, because too often terms are bandied around as to how politics works. What's a plebiscite? What's a by-election? So with Malcolm Turnbull resigning from his seat, that forces a by-election. We've had an unprecedented number of by-elections across the country in the last year, owed mostly to people, to current politicians across all the parties, whether that's Centre Alliance, Labor, Liberal, Greens, in the House of Reps, in the Senate, fallen foul of the Section 44 legislation, which means they have dual citizenship. So where that's found to be true, they have had to recuse themselves from their seat, resign, and a by-election has been forced. So we've seen that happen in places like Longman in Queensland and in Mayo in South Australia, at great expense to the taxpayer, a great personal expense to a lot of politicians, obviously. And now that is happening in Wentworth. Not because Malcolm Turnbull fell foul of any sort of civil issues in terms of his passport, but more because of a Liberal spill that I think he didn't see coming down the pipe. So here we are. Now this is happening in Wentworth. So we don't even have a date of the by-election yet. So we know who the Labor candidate is. The Liberal candidate should be finalised by Monday next week. And then we will all have clarity as to when the by-election will be. 6th of October was originally given us a date, but that is, in fact, that date can't be met now. It's more likely to be towards the end of October now, with a possibility that we forego a by-election and actually roll the by-election into a general election in December. Now, why would that be the case? Well, there's a couple of reasons, but the biggest one is if the Wentworth seat, if the Wentworth electorate stays vacant for too long, that means the current Liberal government loses its one-seat majority in the House. When you lose your one-seat majority in the House, the opposition has the opportunity to put up a vote of no confidence in the government. And if they're successful, that forces a general election. So there's lots of different scenarios being played around at the moment, whether you look at the media or whether you look at Ladbrokes. But the idea is that the seat can stay vacant for about 8 to 10 weeks, but then it needs to roll in, the by-election will need to roll into a general election. So I'll try to keep everyone updated about that. Hi guys, thanks for joining. But let's go to some questions now. Oh, thanks, Christine. That's nice comments. How do you feel about getting your message across on the drum on Monday just gone? yeah, that was an experience, I must say. Look, just so fabulous to be able to get a good platform. I think the feedback that I'm getting is that people are increasingly frustrated with the major parties, and it's never been more evident that the factionalism that exists and how divided and divisive a lot of the individuals are within that area. And it feels like the country is in limbo mode in terms of visionary outcomes or any sort of major reform. So I have a media release on my website. So my website is www.Licia.Heath.com.au. There's already some policy platforms up on that. You'll see that be added to and refined as the campaign goes on. But the premise behind my three main policies, which is the desperate requirement for a federal ICAC, the need for significant parliamentary reform, which includes things like setting a 4-year federal election term, setting up parliamentary standards that align how parliamentarians go about their business the same as how voters go around their business. In other words, working in the same sort of framework. Things like entitlements, making sure that entitlements, lobbying, barring foreign donations, barring the ability for politicians once they retire to move into senior lobbying positions, and also reform around technology, increasing the use of technology to increase the ability for voters to re-engage with politics. So these are all going to be future topics, but part of this whole reform policy of mine is to help instill trust back into the political process. Hi, Amanda. Hi, Pete. Hi, Jeff. So the idea, I have a lot of people coming to me at the moment. What's your view on asylum seekers? What's your view on the environment? What's your view on tax reform? And I do have a view on all of those, but I'm going to stop short there and go back to, but the major reform that I'm running on my ticket is federal ICAC, parliamentary reform, and media reform. And those are all bundled together because unless we fix, or at least admit, address, and then fix how that system is working currently, then regardless of what your environment policy is, your ability to be able to legislate and put in some sort of reformative legislation is just not there, because the machination for how you do it isn't working. And the trust that the voters have in the system is not there for you to be able to prosecute a case. So it is always going to come back to those three things for me. So happy to take questions on that. How will you lead parliamentary reform, Licia? Well, hopefully I just answered a little bit of that, but can I say, this is going to be a topic for another night, but let's dive right in now. Part of some of the wonderful work that I've seen the independents in Parliament do over the last 3 years has been around parliamentary reform. Some people love them, some people loathe them. I'm always happy to have a great debate with people about the role of independents or crossbenchers. My view is that they have not done this role of what people say, you know, they block things and things can't get through. If you look at the Australian Senate, then the crossbenchers of everything that's come across their table, over 90% of what has come their way, they have put through. It might have been with some amendments, but it has gone through. So this idea that they might block is totally false and a bit of a red herring. In terms of parliamentary reform, Nick Xenophon used as one of his leverage points in a discussion 18 months ago, the ability to change how entitlements were registered and set up an independent body. We've seen Cathy McGowan do, and Andrew Wilkie do, and Jackie Lambie. Now they're in different houses, but all have helped contribute with their votes to making sure that reform has happened. So far, it's only been around the edges, but it's so worthwhile, and it's something that's not being driven by the major parties. But it is fundamental to bringing some trust and integrity back to the voting base, because we have not got where we are overnight. It's been people say 10-year, but I would say it's been more like a 15-year slide to where we are, and it's not going to be fixed in 1 year or 2 years. It's going to take a sustained 2, 5, 10 years, hopefully not 10 years, but 5 years of people re-engaging in the system, putting pressure on when reform needs to happen, and then once that reform has happened, applying pressure to make sure all of that legislation that is so critical to our future, not just our country's future, our neighbours' future, the globe's future, can be executed, because currently it can't be. We need to, our democracy is not broken. I don't agree with that at all, but it is sick, but it can be fixed. And the antidote is re-engaging. So thank you everyone for joining. 100% agree, makes incredible sense. You guys, thanks for joining tonight's Look Up with Licia. You have the opportunity to keep asking questions, please, after this live feed goes, but share with your friends, and see you tomorrow night. Licia out.